I'm good. I'm done.
Now, now we're recording. Hello,
Yay!
everybody. Um, Hi. It's been a few minutes, couple long weeks. I had some health things that prevented me from doing some stuff. So, fun fact, before we dive into it, I am just going to give you a brief summary of various things that have been going on, which is why sometimes I don't get things up in time because my health reminded me that I have to actually be careful. And sometimes the day job takes precedent, sometimes the dog. Sometimes I sit there and I really want to do a video and then I fall asleep. And because I,
Self care also falls into the things that sometimes take precedence.
yes,
Yes.
those things. So since we last talked, cardiologist says I'm fine. So I had a little scare with my hearty heart, and now it reminds me that I need to, you know, pause and take care of myself from time to time, and I can't do 50 million things. And then there was also a biopsy in there, but that came back all clear and there's nothing bad. So now that we're out of that weather, sorry, my dog also just tried to gas me out of existence in here. So we're good. That was just a minute.
What
Um,
is it about dog gas that is like from demons? I don't like. They're such
I
sweet
don't.
creatures, and then they emit this. I mean, it should be used in warfare. I feel like
It
it's
should be.
that bad.
Yes, it is that bad. Especially when you have a dog like mine who's apparently has some form of she's terrified of going outside lately.
Mm.
Um so she will hold things as long as she can possibly hold things, and then we have to get her in the car and then we have to take her off of our property so that she can, because I don't know, something happened in our yard that I am not aware of, and yeah, so it adds to the noxiousness when she decides to, let one loose. So that was that moment. I'm sorry. I love you, baby. Yeah, doggy is gonna take some extra attention tonight. So that is why I got a little behind in everything. But we are back, baby, and oh, are we back?
Mm.
Are we back? We have so much to talk about. So we're gonna button up for now. We're gonna put a pin in Karen Reid. Not literally just in the trial part. I realized as soon as I said that. That sounded better in my head.
Put
Whoopsie
a pin in
doodle.
the trial. Put a pin in the trial.
Put a pin in the trial. That's what we're doing. We're putting a pin in the trial. So that's going to be one of our little updates. We're going to talk about some of the stuff we're moving on to. And then we are going to discuss the immunity SCOTUS immunity decision. That was a choice. That was definitely a choice. So that's gonna be one of our deep dives tonight, and then we're gonna address the Neil Gaiman situation and the things that I do for content.
I
Yes, yes, that's where we're at. Have I missed anything, or is it intro time?
think it's intro time. Bring it on.
Hello and welcome to the Unfiltered Tea, a show where we say all the things you wish the newscasters said, unscripted and unfiltered. We talk about news, politics, and entertainment, so pull up your soapbox, pour yourself a cuppa, and let's go.
I hope your soapbox is ready. Mine is hella ready for the big one. Um. So first things first, Karen Reid trial. Jury deliberated for several days, almost a full week. Couldn't come to unanimous decision. So, hung jury back to the drawing board at the end of this month. They will schedule what is next, and then basically that whole circus can start all over again.
Oh, fun.
So we'll see. We'll see. It's going to be a different jury, which means whatever evidence they're going to bring in, who knows? Maybe the prosecution will prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt this time. They didn't for me last time, so I don't know. Yep. So now there's some folks coming out with opinions and things like that. I haven't decided if I'm in a rabbit hole on any of those things yet because I'm kind of over it after it. I see Karen Reed's face and my brain starts singing the song from Lamb Chop, the trial that goes on and on, my friend.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to need to give it a minute.
Do we know already that the prosecution is going to choose to retry?
Yep.
Lovely.
Yep. They said so basically the day of. What is interesting is that Trooper Proctor is on leave. He is on administrative leave at this point.
Ooh.
I don't know if it's without pay or with pay, but yes, he is on leave. Apparently, at the end of the trial, they came out and said, "We've made this decision immediately," which I have problems with them saying immediately because clearly you didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, they have relieved him of duty at this point in time. So
interesting.
Yeah. So that's a fun fact. And then there are some other interviews that I might choose to cover, but I'm more interested in Baldwin, who is going to trial this week. I have, for any of you who have been with us since the beginning, you know I've been following this case since the get-go. I dragged Mandy into this. I'm like, we gotta cover this. We gotta follow this. Covered the Hannah Gutierrez retrial, and I'm stepping up my game for Baldwin. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I don't know if I'm going to do TLDRs. I don't know if I'm going to do recaps. I know I won't be live streaming because I have an actual job.
Yeah. Those dang things, they get in the way.
That I like, and I like my coworkers. So, and I don't think they have leave for me to go watch a trial if I'm not actually on that jury. So
That's fair.
But yeah, so get ready, ladies and gents, because we are going to New Mexico, and I already have thoughts. This is not one I'm walking into unbiased at all. Nope. This is going to be a challenge for me. This for me is like walking into the Depp Heard trial, where I already kind of know where I'm thinking I'm going. I just really hope the prosecution brings their A game. Sorry, I think I cut you off, Mandy. I didn't mean to.
No, I was just going to say it's hard to be unbiased given what we've already seen in the process of the other trials, or the other trial, and all of the media surrounding the plea deals and all that stuff. It's hard not to take positions based on what we've already seen. So.
Did you also hear that TLC has signed on the Baldwin family for
officially?
Uh-huh. Mm-hmm.
Who? I mean, yeah, I'll be interested to see what kind of audience they get for that.
Yep. Yep. So that's happening. So yeah, that's what we're prepared for. I could cover pretrial motions, but I'm not gonna. I think with Baldwin, we know how I feel about it. We know what I think of him. We know what I think should be brought. So I think it will be far more entertaining for everybody to just join us on the ride of the trial.
Yeah.
Maybe have real experts
who actually know how to not scare the heck out of a judge in courtroom and jury. And
It's possible. It's definitely possible. I will say it is interesting because, side note, tangent, I have been listening to the audiobook As You Wish, which is Carrie Elwes talking about the making of The Princess Bride. And so it's got Carrie Elwes and Mandy Patinkin and Rob Reiner and Robin Wright. So it's got everybody talking in these little pieces, Wallace Shawn, about their experience making the film. It is wild to me as we head into the Baldwin trial, the amount that I have heard Mandy Patinkin and Carrie Elwes talk about the careful stunt coordination for every moment of that film and who each person's role is and what they do and what a safety meeting is, and that it happens on every movie set. I mean, it is massively detailed. And fun fact, this book came out way before any of this Baldwin stuff.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's an interesting look as to, what was common in 1980, whatever. Never mind all of the improvements over the years.
As correct practices at that time. Yeah.
Along with some very funny anecdotes. I highly recommend checking it out if you're an audiobook fan. So with that, I am going to swoop. Can you tell we have a hard stop? So I'm like, how quickly can I zoom through the short bits? Also because Mandy won't just sit here and listen to me ramble on when we move on to the next bit. So, swooping now. I have my adult beverage prepared for SCOTUS.
Very nice.
I do have...
Adult beverages are required for SCOTUS these days in general and specifically.
So, how did I make it to 42 and not know somehow that there aren't really any checks or balances on the Supreme Court? How did I miss that?
Well,
until now?
I'm going to opine.
Okay.
As though I understand how our founding fathers tried to set up our government, though I am not a constitutional nor a, government design expert. That's a thing. Let's pretend that should be a thing.
It should be.
But think about the time when all of these things were being put into existence. And at that time, the president, the vice president, was the runner-up for the presidency, which typically meant they were of the opposite party of the president, right?
Mm-hmm.
So basically, debate and healthy challenges and discussion and the ability to work across party lines were sort of just baked in, like they would always be things that would happen. So I think the court is meant to be its own check and balance in that the 9 justices, it was sort of assumed that a balanced court would be maintained, whether through just believing that debate and different viewpoints would be healthy, or because justices would be nominated, over time by different parties. Clearly, that did not work out. At least not today.
It worked for a couple hundred years, which is a pretty good run-ish.
Indeed.
But now it's there are more ethics requirements for like my job than there seem to be. And I know we're talking generalizations right now. It's partly because I'm procrastinating, because The idea of granting the president full immunity, it's like if I wanted to live in Russia, I would have moved there. If I liked that sort of set of laws, I would have moved to a place like that.
Yeah.
And now I'm a little concerned. I'm very concerned.
Yes.
Especially
Yeah.
because one of Trump's advisors, one of the first interviews I heard him say, it was Stan Van Miller, said his aim was to be a modern day Hermann Goering for somebody. And then he picked Trump. And if we want to put them side by side, they're kind of going from the same playbook.
Well, and I haven't finished reading, I have to admit, Project 2025, but at some point when I have finished reading it, we should spend some time.
Oh, we should talk about that, because things like the Baldwin trial are nice and shiny, and Project 2025 is like that homework assignment that I know I should read and I don't want to.
Exactly. That's I've started it and then I have to step away. Because it is one in a long line of horrifying. Desperately, I wish I could throttle some people, not to their death, but just to get some sets into them. Yeah, it's just, but anyway, I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. We were talking about the Supremes. Apparently, they take that title, some of them, differently than it was intended.
Yeah, I kind of am sad that Clarence Thomas never took John Oliver up on his offer. I thought that was a sweet retirement deal, man.
Right?
I was so hoping. And I have not fully read, I will admit. I've not brought myself to fully read the immunity decision granting the president full immunity, which is
immunity for official acts while in office.
which gets real murky, doesn't it?
Yeah, as I understand it, there's no definition included, and I haven't read the full decision either. I've read a lot of coverage of it, but I haven't read the full decision. But to my understanding, it doesn't define what is and isn't an official act, but also when you're the president,
I have it up. It's
all of
116
your
pages.
acts official enough? Like, I mean, I don't know, going to the bathroom, maybe not, blowing your nose, but like, don't like it.
Yeah, it seems problematic.
At best.
And I do want to read through the whole thing. It's also designed somewhere in here, in some of the reporting I've heard, that they say that only the Supreme Court can determine what's an official act and what isn't, which I have an even bigger problem with, since this court has a memory issue. Their relationship with precedent is shaky.
Well, and with the parties as well.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what's really interesting to me is, in theory, our current sitting president could just start having a field day with this decision.
I said the same thing. I was like, so according to this, there could be a lot of official acts that could actually go through and wouldn't have a problem. Like, we could actually enshrine a very different and much closer to reality democracy. We could declare that felons can't run for president. I mean, there's just a lot that could be done. Unfortunately, we have a dinosaur in office right now who I'm not sure has thought about that all the way through.
Well, and to whoever's credit, whether it's actually our sitting president or those who advise him, if the Supreme Court decides what are official acts, it could get very sticky in the aftermath.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's why it hasn't happened, because if it goes back to the Supremes, then clearly he has. I mean, Alito isn't even bothering to hide it anymore. Thomas just doesn't say anything ever.
Have you seen the meme that says he's been bought so much we should just start calling him Clearance Thomas? One of my favorites. I really like it.
I mean, it hurts my brain that Clarence Thomas is an originalist who wants to bring back the Constitution to its original meaning. Like, has he looked in the mirror, or does he miss what that would mean for him? Is it like Amy Coney Barrett, who's also on there and also an originalist and also misses the fact that she too was property 200 years ago? Like,
indeed.
You don't
Perhaps in a slightly different sense, but yes, indeed. Had no voice.
Yeah.
Was disenfranchised.
And for the founding fathers, women, I mean, the Eliza Hamilton book really documents how problematic it was for women who were considered property, but different property. Not enslaved property, but still
No, I mean, it's signified by the whole idea of a dowry, and all of and yeah, there are definitely ways in which women were treated like property.
Eliza Hamilton fighting her own children for her own things that she made and built because she was a woman and so she couldn't handle money. That's a whole different rabbit hole. We won't.
Let's not get lost on that right now.
So yeah, I'm
a big like hypocrisy. What's the word I'm looking for? I'm an enemy of hypocrisy, right?
Yeah, you and I don't like it. It smells bad. We dislike.
So I don't know that I can yet articulate this perfectly, but the same court that decided that it's not a federal decision, they cannot. The court is not empowered, nor does the Constitution protect a woman's right to choose.
Mm-hmm.
Can empower one person to do whatever the hell they want, basically, without fear of legal retribution.
Correct.
That, I mean, it's not the only thing that blows my mind, but that blows my mind. It just completely blows my mind. You know, like, okay, so we have to leave a woman's right to choose up to the states. And correct me if I'm wrong, but our former president is being charged with crimes in individual states, which to me means that, I mean, I would have to go look at the specific cases that are pending to see if each of them is in a state court or a federal, but I imagine they're in state courts because he has to go to anyway, it doesn't, no, bad. Stop it.
Yes.
It doesn't make any freaking sense.
They are in state courts. I will say Georgia needs to get its act together because Georgia's not doing real well in the court.
No.
State.
No.
Between the initial insanity, and then,
well, and now aren't they waiting to see if they even can bring charges? Isn't that where they're at right now? Or if they can continue to pursue charges, rather?
I think they're looking to see if they can pursue the charges. I know that I saw somewhere that Judge Merchant is now reviewing each of the 34 felonies to determine if he can indeed sentence based on any of those. I think he's probably safe because none of those things happened while he was president.
Correct. At least that's my understanding as well. I, again, don't mean to act as though I am an expert on either the charges or how this new ruling
Well, there were a
is
couple of
going to be
things. Well,
applied.
I understand why Merchant is doing that because the payment plan went
Ah,
from candidacy into presidency. So if paying off Michael Cohen is then determined to be an official act, then based on this Supreme Court ruling, Merchant doesn't think he can sentence for it.
so yeah, I want to dig into that.
Mm-hmm.
I do, because to my mind, a payment plan is pursuant to a contract that must have been executed before he was actually in office. But maybe there was no contract. Maybe it's all just, you know.
I mean, I would side with that, and I think Merchant would have good grounds to stand on so long as he didn't have to bring it before Alito, Thomas, and Kavanaugh, and Barrett. Every now and then, Kavanaugh has a brain. Every now and then, Barrett has a brain. And when I say that, I mean every now and then they have a moment where, like, they're actually based in law and reality and facts as we know them and can verify them. And every now and then they take a sharp right, and I don't understand. I don't like where we are now. I don't.
Nor do I.
Fun to be here.
Nor do I.
Oh, I'm sorry. I knocked my mic several times, so hopefully you didn't hear that.
I heard something, but it wasn't hugely disruptive. You're okay.
Okay. So, Doggy is having a moment. Doggy is having a rough night. So yeah, I'm looking at some of these things here. I have the court documents pulled up for this. It's just 119 pages, so I'm not entirely sure I want to go through the whole thing with us this evening. Here's what I am going to do. So we've got an election coming up. I think we all know where I stand on this, which is I would like a... Remember that Golden Girl? Well, I'm talking to the internet, so many people maybe aren't old enough to remember the Golden Girls at all. But there is a great scene in one of the episodes where Rose brings home a dog, and there's a big fight about the dog, and they're trying to decide if he can stay or not. And at one point, something happens. The dog walks up to Sophia, and she looks at him, and she goes, "A viable Democratic candidate for president. Go!"
Yes, it's Dreyfus, right?
Yes, it's Dreyfus.
Yes, Dreyfus from Empty Nest. Which, if you don't know the Golden Girls, you definitely don't know Empty Nest. But it was a less iconic show that ran around the same time on the same network, so there were occasionally crossovers, including of the big, almost Beethoven-esque dog that was adorable and in Empty Nest, but occasionally also in Golden Girls.
He was wonderful, and good Lord, 40 years on, and I still wear Dreyfus to send us a viable Democratic candidate for
Well,
president.
see, Dreyfus couldn't even find one. Horrifying. I don't know. I mean, I know we don't really want to tackle necessarily the whole, like, the debate debacle and everything that has gone on since then tonight. But I need to say this out loud while we're doing these things.
Yeah.
That I keep seeing people shouting down those who would like to pursue the possibility of a different Democratic nominee by saying he's the nominee. We have to stand behind him. And from where I sit, as a person who would love to understand how we could better pursue and find, for the love of everything, a more viable Democratic nominee, I would love to do that. That doesn't mean if we don't do that, I'm planning on voting for Trump. I don't mean to speak for other people. Maybe there are people who are fence-sitting out there, but I think a lot of people are of the same mentality I am, which is the most disturbing part of that debate to me was that our president let a convicted felon drive the entire conversation in directions that had nothing to do with the questions, that were not favorable to our sitting president, that it was awful. If he can't drive the conversation or turn the conversation or reject the premise of the previous statement, I fear that it's just going to continue to degenerate this entire campaign into talking about our golf handicaps and crap like that. And so swinging any voters who aren't already anti-Trump enough to vote for literally close to, I don't want to say anything, but within, legitimate reason, anybody who's on the Democratic side of the ticket, it's the rest of the people that we're worried about. It's actually capturing some hearts and minds that are on the fence, or that, and I don't see that happening with our sitting president unless there's a massive campaign of some kind that I have not conceived of in my brain to bring things back to, and I just don't see how it's going to happen. So anyway, my point was, and I'm sorry, Aurora, I'm soapboxing, I'm almost done, but the two things are not mutually exclusive.
Right.
I can still plan to vote for Biden, but also desperately wish that we had a better option. I can do both of those things.
And with that debate, I found out only later that real-time fact-checking wasn't allowed to happen. Which is a problem. The moderators should be allowed to fact-check in real time. If we are going to have a debate with no audience and muting mics with these two, you know what you should do? You should be able to real-time fact-check, especially for those who are on the fence. Because there's a whole lot of lies that got spewed by one, and there were a few lies that got spewed by the other one. And but it doesn't matter, because if you fact check after the fact, it does not matter.
You're preaching to your own choir. Whoever is publishing those fact-checked results, you're already preaching to the converted.
And so, yeah, no, I am with you. I've had conversations with people where they're like, I don't know what to do. I don't feel comfortable voting for anybody. And I looked at one of them and I was like, considering that the entire fate of our country is on the line, I'm voting for who's going to take over the office if either one of them drops dead of old age. Because they're both older than dirt.
Yes.
So if one just...
And I don't care how many tests our former president claims to have taken, his mental faculties are questionable at best as well. Read an actual record of statements that he's made, including his posts on social media. They don't make any damn sense. I was just reading one the other day that said he has no idea what Project 2025 is. And then he goes on to say, some of the things in there are blah, blah, blah. If you don't know what it is, you can't talk about it. What? Sorry, that was very shrill. I apologize to your dog and any other dogs that were listening, because they might have been the only ones who heard the end of that sentence.
I have headphones, so we are good. She is just panicking at this point. That's better. Because it's raining, and dog doesn't do rain, thunder, fireworks. Doesn't matter if it's overhead or... That dog will sniff a storm 30 miles away and run inside.
Oh, poor baby.
So,
Mine doesn't
Yeah.
like storms, but he just looks outside at the rain and then looks at me like, I'm not doing that. No. He luckily does not panic. He just is like, I won't go out there. You can't make me. Nope.
I love it. So we're gonna circle back because the election is coming up. We got to talk about this. We also got to talk about I send out the VPs because they're next in line to whoever ends up here. So I am ready. Send out the backup plan. Let them debate because honestly, I don't think anybody on either side cares or is going to be swayed by a debate between these two cats.
No.
But they might be swayed by the vice president option. And the reason for that is because I don't think any of us expect either of them to last another 4 years, especially in office. So, you're okay, honey. Just a little fireworks. We might have to put on some music, ladies and gentlemen. I do apologize if I need to do that. I will find something that won't get copywritten problems.
Yeah, you know what's interesting? Our cat had worse reactions to the fireworks this year than the dog did. I had no idea that was a thing. I don't know if we're just giving him complexes. Because for those of you who don't know me well, my cat will no longer tolerate going to the vet. Like, throws himself about inside his carrier like he's in a cartoon. You know, one of those cartoons where, like, the thing, whatever's inside, reaches out and grabs something and pulls it in, and then the whole thing rocks like this. That was scary from my perspective, but it does. It goes, you know, that's what his carrier looks like when you make him go to the vet's office. So between that and now being afraid of fireworks, I don't know if we've given him anxiety. I'm not really sure.
Oh, poor kitty.
Yeah.
My love goes out to all of you with neurotic animals like we managed to bring home. Me. I'm the problem. It's me. A lot. And I do love you, girl, but oh yeah, I'm gonna speed things along because we are having a time. So we are gonna circle back to all things SCOTUS and mostly the presidency. Before I swoop, if any of you, any of our wonderful subscribers have ideas for how we could, have a choice that anybody would feel like I'm voting for that person, whether now or in the future. It doesn't have to be this election. I'm not saying, we kind of know what our choices are at this point because that's the system we've set up. Or, do you want to go back to the way it was in the 1860s where nobody ran for president per se? The parties just formed and then chose the person that they wanted to back, and then they either agreed or in the case
or hilarity ensued. Yeah.
or hilarity ensued. Yes, and sometimes both. Ulysses S. Grant. And or do we want to bring back the vice president being the runner-up in the election? I think that might open up the party options to not just having Dumb and Dumber for our party options.
Don't you just imagine that the whole world is looking at us like, guys, these are the best they could do?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's so sad. It's comical and sad and horrifying. And
it's embarrassing at this point.
It is.
It's embarrassing. Especially when both of them are like, we're the greatest country in the world. I'm like, have you met the world? Because we're better than some. But we're definitely below a lot.
Highly recommend you watch the first episode of The Newsroom because there's a speech in there that I believe in America. I'm not trying to sully us as a country, but we're best in terms of things that are measurable. It's a hard pill to swallow.
Oh, yeah. Don't mind me, ladies and gentlemen. This is what recording live looks like, where I am texting another member of my household to see if they can sneak in and cuddle the dog.
Yes. Aw. If we need to take a break or anything, just let me know. But until then,
There.
how shall I entertain everyone while Aurora texts? Interestingly, I just auditioned for a play called What the Constitution Means to Me. Can't imagine why a theater would be putting that on this year.
Oh,
But it's really it's an interesting nudge to think about and maybe even spend more time on than I normally would. Rereading the Constitution, thinking about the Constitution, how it's being used both rhetorically and legally these days. So I'll just throw that out there.
I'd also be interested in diving into the women's suffrage movement a little bit, because so far some of the best reporting I've ever heard on the history of the women's suffrage movement is a drunk history episode.
Nice.
Highly recommend. Truly hilarious and brilliant, and yeah, all verifiable facts. Don't mind me. I'm just gonna knock into things. What I am gonna do now is I am gonna swoop and yeah, I'm gonna swoop, and then we're gonna hit our last topic. Look at us, Mandy. We're just
rocking and rolling. Woo!
You'd think we were doing this for a while or something. Except I almost forgot to hit the little markers, so... Uh-oh. Did you lose something?
I'm knocking things over now. It's my turn. Sorry about that.
Okay. No worries. All right. We're going to talk about the Gaiman situation, the Neil Gaiman accusations, and the things that I have done for this channel. Because here's the thing. I went looking to see if I could listen to this podcast anywhere that I already have an account or something. Nope. I had to create an account. I had to download a new app, and I had to create an account, which I have issues with because it's real clickbaity. If I am trying to listen to something to determine how I feel about this, I strongly dislike that I have to download a whole new app. It's the only way. It's not out in other places. Some people were finding it other places today, but it certainly wasn't there yesterday when I went hunting. And then,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No. Finish up. Go ahead.
So I download the new app. It asks for things like my name, my email. Okay, fine. It also asked for my age and my gender, which I have issues with because I don't understand why you need that information. And it's not optional, or I don't think it was optional.
That's what I was going to say. I don't mind if places want to collect that if you're willing to share it.
Mm-hmm.
But because, demographics and marketing and I get that. But you should always have a other choose not to disclose or make it an optional field in some other way.
Maybe I just didn't find it, but I couldn't find it.
You're pretty smart. I feel like you would have found it.
I feel like I would have. I mean, I was in a mode where I wasn't getting the facts of the situation that I wanted online. There was no other news source that hasn't already burned themselves, in my own personal opinion, based on previous... The Depp Heard trial. If I see Rolling Stone parroting something, I don't care because they have been so... They didn't care about the facts in that trial, and they haven't cared about the facts in several other things. So
yeah, not their first misstep. Yeah,
right. So it was... I wasn't seeing like the Guardian or the New York Times, and New York Times has its own problems, but
Mm.
The Wall Street Journal. I was not seeing anybody doing anything other than just re-quoting this podcast with these allegations. So that's a problem that I have. So, but I did download the app. I did listen to the 4-hour long episodes of this podcast. Albeit I had to stop several times, or my phone was going to get thrown across the room. Not out of anger at what I was at. It wasn't due to disappointment because I am a Neil Gaiman fan and what I was hearing was heart-wrenching and how can he do this? It was the worst reporting I have heard since the day I turned on right-wing talk radio all days to listen to what they were saying. We're talking
Yeah.
Limbaugh, Hannity, O'Reilly was still on those days.
The OG cast, yes.
Oh yeah. So let's see. Do you want me to share some of my notes?
Oh, please. I would love that.
The first note I write for episode 1 starts really clickbaity. It's already clickbaity because I'm, downloading an app and trying to listen to this, but it started out very what you are about to hear is graphic and tragic, and we just want to warn you that this is real. I can't even do it. It was painful.
Fun.
Let's see. Immediately goes
Sounds
into
very 22 wordsy.
Yes. Oh, and then they started with using some clips, audio clips from the Netflix series Sandman. That was where we started. Mm-hmm.
Again, seems 22 wordsy to me.
Yep. Then they run through his entire CV. They use terms like psychological labyrinth. Okay. Here's the issue that I have with this reporting. Absolutely 110%. I'm not saying that these two women do not have valid claims. Here's my problem. They did not provide, in the 4 hours I listened to, there were extremely cherry-picked audio clips from the interview that the reporter did, and I use the term reporter very loosely, did with these two women. They didn't just sit there and play the interview. It was not an interview with commentary in and out. It was clips of an interview with each victim with a whole lot of rabbit hole commentary that didn't have anything to do with anything. In episode 3, we go down a whole rabbit hole on how Gaiman was raised a Scientologist, and most of his family is still in Scientology, but he left in the 80s, which is all pretty verifiable. But somewhere in there, his father had been declared an SP. If you, this suppressive person is what they call people that don't align with it. Yeah. They also said some very interesting things where it's just like, supposedly this is Scientology does a disconnection or something like that. I was like, have you not been paying attention? There's like 2,700 YouTube channels of former Scientologists discussing how this goes.
Yeah.
And when Scientology declares you an SP, usually there's some sort of allegation that gets leaked
Yes.
to the press about who you are. So, and when I say who you are, most of the time it has nothing to do with anything. And the reporter that they spoke to about the Scientology stuff has some serious problems when you're like me and you fall down these weird rabbit holes. I watch a lot of these other YouTube channels and I'm like, but his reporting is really problematic. So why are you using him as a verifiable source for this? Like, because he can be that was a half hour that was, I'm not even sure why that was there. Like, I couldn't tell you why that was there.
Just to cast aspersions, basically. Sounds
It
like.
felt that way. It really felt that way. And then that was around the same time that I started hearing from both accounts one of the reporters going, now, all of the WhatsApp messages and emails that she provided to us verify Neil Gaiman's version of the story, but only if you take it at face value.
What?
That
I'm not even sure I understand what that means. Like, only if you don't pretend things are there that aren't? Only if you. I don't. What?
yeah. And they said it multiple times. So for me, nowhere on the app or the podcast did they provide pages of these messages or emails for me to read on my
Yeah.
own. They chose absolutely every bit of it. And I have some issues with that. And then on top of that, if I have to be told multiple times, these all corroborate the supposed perpetrator's version of events, but only if you take it at face value. So you're telling me that I need to ignore all the bits that don't fit.
Yeah.
And I need to just assume he's a monster because somebody said so. Also,
that's the thing. I don't think we have enough information to make any judgments at this point. So I do think we've gotten. So I think a lot of things in our society swing on a pendulum, right? So I think the Me Too movement and many things that have happened since then have swung the pendulum in a positive direction.
Yeah.
Whereas, I grew up hearing all the stories about women who claimed that they had been assaulted were not given the benefit of the doubt at all. They were often victim blamed. They were often, discredited for really sketchy reasons. And so I'm grateful that we have started. I can't speak to like court case effectiveness, but at least in public opinion,
right.
We seem to have swung the pendulum the other way.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we have to be careful that we're not doing the same thing now to the supposed aggressors, or the what was the word that you just used?
Perpetrator.
Perpetrators. Thank you. I don't know why, man. Whew, the heat. We'll blame the heat. But the supposed perpetrators also deserve some benefit of the doubt. Everybody is innocent until proven guilty. And so I don't, it sounds like the bit of information that is in the public so far is not convincing in either direction. It's not, is he a monster? Is he not a monster? It's something happened between him and each of these people, clearly. Yep. I don't think we yet have any idea what it is. They both do have an idea. They were there, but I don't think the rest of us have enough information to make a judgment.
And I will say, from listening to what was published in the podcast, removing the commentary, because that's what it was, aside, taking that, leaving that out, just going with the story and what they provided for evidence. If I, in my head, as I was listening to it at one point, I went, flip the genders. Flip the genders. So if he's doing all of these, if the he in the situation, just flip the people in the story. I was like, just to give myself the assurance that I'm not just taking, that my fandom isn't tainting this. I'm like, flip it and sort of remove the personalities as best you can, but flip this entirely so that it's an older woman, younger man. How would the press be covering this exact same thing? We would throw her a party and say, good on you. And it wouldn't matter if it was a problematic relationship or not. It wouldn't matter if she was committing SA or not. We would give her a round of applause and talk about how great it is that she was able to land a 23-year-old at her age. I'm looking at Tina Turner. I'm looking at Cher. This isn't something. And so for me, when I see the rhetoric of there is no world where a 23-year-old should be dating a 63-year-old, clearly he's taking advantage of her. Clearly it's a problem. Clearly he's exploiting her. I've known enough women who just simply didn't date their age group.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was a power imbalance. Sometimes they liked that. That was the goal. It's not my scene. I don't like it. But it doesn't mean it doesn't work for them. So I can't, for me, when I'm evaluating this, both girls agree that their relationships were consensual with him. What they don't agree with is that every time that they were physically intimate was consensual. Then
I'm not recalling from what you said so far what the time frames were. How recently? How long ago?
So one of them, it was like 20 years ago, early 2000s. She met him at 18. Their relationship started when she was 20. That is victim K. And she only came forward, and I'm not saying it didn't take her time. This is not to discount her story in any way. I have questions about her story, but it actually seems far more linear in her telling of it. There's definitely more things that map out in a way that don't contradict earlier bits of the same story. And it kind of makes sense. The issue that I have with her story is she continued emailing back and forth with Gaiman right up through 2014, 2017. I can't remember. For years and years and years after. Okay. Sometimes that happens. I get that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has me asking more questions. I don't have enough answers.
Yeah.
With what I was given from her story. So I can't verify certain things. And it's not that I don't necessarily believe them, it's just when I find this, when this story is presented to us after both of the reporters discuss taking 8 months trying to find another victim, and instead running up against person after person after person after person who dated him or slept with him or whatever, that all say he was the kindest, most wonderful person. So they're on a fishing that's what loses me. It's clearly a fishing expedition at that point, because if you are making call after call after call after call after call, and you
Yeah.
go till you hit another person with a story, it's more finding the facts to fit your narrative rather than the other way around, is how it reads to me.
Well, and I mean, I think it also brings up the interesting question that I don't have an answer for, and I'm not suggesting a stance on. But I mean, in a consensual relationship, what does being in a consensual relationship mean? Like, when it's not an encounter, when it is an ongoing relationship. I can't think of a better word, you know? So what does that mean? And what, I guess, again, like I'm of an age where I've been through multiple variations of what consent means in the public domain and how we deal with that and all of those things, which, you know, is its own, we could have a whole show just on that.
We
But
could.
it does seem to me that just like if I'm in a consensual relationship with someone ongoing, it seems to me that the bar for expressing my lack of consent for something is a little bit higher, if that makes sense. I don't mean I should have to jump up and down and scream, no, 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 no. But I also am not sure when explicit consent is individually required. Am I making any sense? Because, like,
No, you are absolutely making sense. And the other factor in both of these, plus in, according to the reporters, which again, taking with a very big grain of salt, we will get to that in a minute. But the other factor in all of this is that, according to Gaiman's version of events, BDSM is involved in a couple of these relationships. Hence why the podcast is called Master. And there's a whole bit where they go down the road of like, and he asked her to call him Master. And I'm like, have you met people with that particular kink? Because I have.
yeah.
This is a very normal thing. This is not weird. This is, I mean, it's weird to me. But that's because that's not my jam. That doesn't,
Yeah.
I don't understand it. But you do. You have fun. Don't bring that in this house, because that ain't me. But if you're, and I can't quite make the leap that he would just decide that, and then, I mean, maybe it'll come out that he decided, but according to her, that wasn't. They didn't get her side of that. I never heard her voice discuss
Interesting.
that particular claim. They set it up that he just decided this. and then didn't really talk to her about it. But there wasn't anything in her own words or in any of the messages that they read that confirmed that in any way. So I am left with questions, and ultimately what I am left with is the messages themselves. They do corroborate his version of the events by the reporter's own words.
But only if you take them at face value.
But only if you take them at face value. And I don't know about you, Mandy, but how many times, given what I watch, how many times have we said text like your text messages are going to end up in court?
Yes, 100%. 100%.
So the reason for that is, in a case like this, oh, you're going to ask, let's presume this eventually goes to court. You're going to ask that jury to read these messages and then add a subliminal subtext onto this that only one party is saying. So this is where I have questions. Other questions that I have in this podcast. The person who first came forward, Scarlett. This relationship happened 2022, so recently.
Okay.
2022, anyway, end of 22, beginning of, yeah. Very recently. And I might need to go back and listen to it again. The idea, but she had
if you can even stand that idea, yes.
Yeah, as a nanny by Amanda Palmer, not Gaiman. They were married at the time. They had an open marriage, whatever. She was told to go to Neil's house because they had separate houses. This is a whole different conversation because, again, they said they were Gaiman and Palmer said they were getting married, and I went, that's a choice. Okay.
Again, you guys do you.
You do you. If it works for you, great. So as they're talking in this podcast, they get to this whole bit about Amanda Palmer, and this Scarlett person was a huge fan and had a crush on Amanda Palmer. Amanda Palmer needs a nanny. So she hires this fan to be her nanny. The fan that she knows has a crush on her to be her nanny, and then she sends her off to Neil Gaiman. The kid is out on some epically long play date. This is where I start to have major questions because nobody's checking in with this kid. This kid is on a play date until 11 o'clock at night and he's 7. Like, maybe it's just. So I have questions.
Yeah, me too.
I have questions. There's a thing about Gaiman drawing her a bath, handing her a towel, and saying, go on down, come back up, come back to the house when you're done. And then coming down and getting in the bath with her. Which is another big leap, but we kind of skipped over all of that.
Okay.
So, I'm going to assume that she's telling the truth up to here, and he just randomly gets in the bath with her, and her initial reaction is to just, cocoon herself and not say anything and freeze and not whatever. And he's kind of pushing her to, relax and whatever. I still have questions because that's a very big leap. And I would want to talk to somebody in their early 20s to be like, because I've been in a situation where fight, flight, freeze, yes. Coercion, yes. Not really wanting to be there, yup. Not really having an option, yup.
Yep.
And so I can pretty much tell you what I would do in that situation and what I did. Now, there's a big difference between this is happening, whether you want it to or not. You can choose to say yes, or you can choose to have it happen anyway. That was kind of my version. Hell, let's see if we can make the best of it, shall we? But in other situations, it's been like, I'm sorry, what? Like, but the other thing that they had mentioned briefly at the beginning and then they skipped over to this part is that Amanda Palmer had everybody walking around the house naked all the time. Okay. And then we jump from there to Neil Gaiman walking around naked. And I'm like, but you just said that this is like a household thing.
Yeah, it's like a naked house. Which is it? Okay, sure.
Which I have issues with. And I don't care how big a fan I am. If I walked into that, I would be like, yeah, I put on a sweater at a massage, so I'm gonna scoot. This is not how I roll. You guys
Yeah.
can find somebody else. And so on the one hand, this Scarlett texts a friend and says it was weird and she didn't like it. But then she also texts Gaiman the next day, thank you for a lovely, lovely evening, and something about not looking forward to the next time or something like that. I'm like, and this is where you start to lose me. This is where I start to ask a lot more questions.
Yeah.
And then in her account, she describes the pain of one of the R events. I can't remember if it's that first one or a different one. She describes the pain as celestial.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Which for
Unless
me,
that is a very oblique reference. I can make a very roundabout path to where that could be trying to go. But unless it's that, I don't get it.
yep, that I heard that and I went, what? And then I said that to another friend earlier today and they went, what? I think I said it to my mom. I was like, the pain is celestial. And she went, what? It, and this for me is where I went, this is like Amber Heard. This is like watching Amber Heard testify. We're going along and you're going along, you're going along, and then we take a weird turn and you're like, huh?
Where am I? What just happened?
What? But how did you, that, I'm confused.
I mean, was this in the context of being interviewed and describing it on the spot?
Possibly. So that is an option.
Because I will say, like, I cannot, as just happened a little while ago, I can't always pull the word that I want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't usually just accept a different word. I will actually say, that's not the word I want, and I can't, something along those lines. But yeah.
Well, it was also in a section of questioning where the reporter sounded like she was trying to get some more details of the event. Now, I absolutely understand that victims of SA do not always remember things in a linear way. You can remember weird things, you can block out big things. No two people are the same. There is no right way or wrong way to act or to describe things.
No, agreed.
But if you're only going to give me very short clips of the interview, and we start in this sort of word salady thing where there aren't actual details being described, there's nothing about this story in specifics for these little pieces. There's comments about, well, I don't know, it's hard for me to say it organically. It doesn't come organically to me. And I'm like, there's a problem with how this is coming out, and I don't know. I put this on the podcasters, not the people speaking. I haven't heard enough of their interviews to make any decisions on their story.
Yeah.
The reporting was abysmal. Do not set me up to tell me something, and do not claim to have both sides of the story, because one of the things they did go over was they said, well, we reached out to Neil Gaiman for his side of the story. And his publicist, his PR team, got back to us and said, what questions are you going to ask? And the questions were basically, I'm paraphrasing, but the questions were along the lines of, how do you really feel about sexual assault? Sorry, YouTube. How do you really feel about SA? How do you really feel about giant age gaps and power imbalances? Have you changed your opinion from your previous tweets to now that we have these accusations against you? To which the PR team said, yeah, we're going to need the full list of questions, because this seems like nobody wins. This seems like this is going to be a problem for you, for us, for everybody. So, of course, I spun that as, you're going to have problems if you do this. It's not what I got when I listen. They at least read the publicist, the PR person's notice.
Nice.
Basically,
Good.
like, we're not doing this until you can provide us with some more details of these questions and what the overall idea of this is. And they were like, so he didn't do it. I'm like, when I hear what you sent them, and my initial reaction is, those are gotcha questions if I ever heard any, and there is literally no right answer for the person being asked these questions. Not a single right answer. If I was his PR team, I was like, I'd say no.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I want more information. I want to see the messages. If we're going to go this route, if we are going to take somebody down, call him a monster, demand that he give up everything, you know what I want?
Are they actually bringing charges? These two women?
No. One did go to the police. They played this much of her at the police station when she was following up, after 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 following up. And their reaction was pretty much, your story and your evidence, we don't have enough to go on. We don't have enough to go on. We don't have enough to expand the investigation. And then she went to the press. This is also after she got cut off entirely. All of this, she went to the police after she got cut off by Gaiman and Palmer financially.
This was the more recent of the two, the nanny. Okay.
Yep. After she got cut off financially, then she went to the police. And they've said they can't do anything.
I mean, I have trouble with that because, of course, if she really does feel that she was taken advantage of, if she really does feel that she has a basis for
Yeah.
actually bringing charges, again, that's reminiscent to me of earlier times when it was very much when there were rarely just let's jump in and prosecute someone. And I guess the whole reason I asked the question is like, yeah, I'd love to know the details too. And I guess there's really no way to reverse the direction public opinion is going without more information. But it feels like we're delving too far into private lives if it's not actually going to go to court. So I don't wish to disturb people's privacy any more than they're willing to have it disturbed. But if both of them continue to pursue the press angle, then I suppose that's opening up their diaries, as it were, for everybody to see.
I am of the, if you are presenting these to reporters and you want the world to see them, let the world see them.
Yeah, agreed.
Because it's, and unfortunately, it's funny though, because the Twitter sphere, the Thread sphere yesterday was entirely Gaiman is monster, burn all his books, blah 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 blah. Today, there's a whole bunch of people going, I listened to that 4 hours. And I have a lot more questions for everyone involved. Also, the reporters are problematic. Known for accurate investigative journalism, they are not.
Yes, and when you say reporters, you mean the folks who are reporting on it, not the two females.
Yep. Yes. No. They. As far as the two women concerned, I'm not going to sit here and say I buy everything they just said, hook, line, and sinker, because both of them had problems in their stories, and it's not a. This is not how a victim acts. Blah blah blah. That's not what I'm talking about. Both of them had problems in their stories. Both of them had moments in their stories where I'm like, if we switch genders right now, one of you is a stalker and the other one is not. And you know who the stalker is? Not the guy you're saying is a bad guy. The one from 20 years ago when he broke up with her, by her own account, she went and bought a $500 plane ticket, got on the plane, caused such a scene that she was eventually escorted off of the plane because the scene was something along the lines of, you can't break up with me, don't break up with me. This is why I say the story themselves are problematic, because what would all of our initial reactions be if you flipped the genders and a girl broke up with a guy, got on a, said, you know what, I can't do this anymore. No matter what the relationship was, like, if, let's assume everything was the same and the girl said, I can't do this anymore, got on a plane, and a dude spent money, got on a plane, and caused such a scene that he got kicked out. Yeah. How would we feel about that story if those genders were flipped? We would have very different takes. And this reporter would have a very different take. Based on, I did a full, like, I went into halfway down 2023. She tweets a lot. On her
Not
Twitter.
Surprised.
The lady reporter on this one, can't remember her first name. her last Rachel Johnson.
Hmm.
Her brother is Boris Johnson, former PM of Britain.
Yeah.
You know who else this reporter retweets a whole lot? J.K. Rowling. And her turf feminism BS about how trans women aren't women, shouldn't be considered women, should be banished from all society, blah, 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 blah.
Lovely.
So that's a very strong point of view, and you're coming at a man who is well known for being an ally. Like, long before it was cool, long before it was like a good PR thing to do for trans women. So I can't separate that without more evidence that the reporter did more homework. It definitely, you know me. It's math problem, right? Bill Cosby, math problem. You're not getting. Say you have two liars in the 67 plus that came forward. Yeah, it's still a math problem. Weinstein, math problem.
Oh my
dozens
gosh,
and dozens and dozens. And for all the talk in this podcast about Neil Gaiman backdating an NDA, that's such common practice, I can't even begin to tell you. So it's like, that's not weird to me that he backdated an NDA. Gaiman, by none of these accounts, is backing up his NDAs with former mercenaries, which is that was what Weinstein was doing. He was not backing up his NDAs in a court of law. He was backing them up similar to the mob. So that's a very different kettle of fish.
Indeed.
And the math just doesn't. And then with Johnny Depp, he got Amber Heard went in. She called TMZ at the right time. She made some accusations. She did some stuff. And he reached a point where he decided he wanted to take her to court and sued her for defamation. And I watched every minute of that trial.
Yes, you did.
He had the evidence. She did not. His evidence could be verified. Hers, not so much. In the battle of the experts, he had experts that were experts. You could just tell they were experts. Hers were very, hers always tended to land on the side of women can't be abusers.
Yeah.
And I have a problem with that also because in Amber Heard's case, literally every person she dated since she was a public figure had a bad habit of sprouting black eyes when they were together and a habit of not sprouting them at all ever when they were apart. So again, for me, that's a math problem, and math is in Depp's paper.
Yeah. Yeah.
And now here we are, and we have two people who've come forward who say similar things. But it took a lot of work to find that second person. And
is that how the second person came forward? I was just trying to do some light Googling, but it was because they were contacted. It wasn't, they did not separately speak.
Either they were contacted directly or they heard from a friend that this was fishing expedition was happening, and she went, "Oh, I have one."
I have dirt.
Um,
I
and I've seen online a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, okay, this makes sense," or "I was at a reading and he was looking at me creepy," or whatever. I'm not saying that we're not going to uncover a problematic hornet's nest.
Sure.
But these two accounts aren't enough for me to go on. They didn't provide me enough evidence. They didn't cite anything. There are no laws for me to look at
Yeah.
for them citing it. And with Scarlett, who was the first one who came forward, I have issues because in one of her stories, I went, that doesn't sound right to me. She claims that she, at some point during one of their, Neil Gaiman went back to the UK and just left her in the house. This is
Okay.
I couldn't quite get a timeline because they didn't really give me one, but somewhere in there I've gotten that she sent him over 100 messages in, like, he went back to the UK, she sent him over 100 messages. He very rarely responded, and when he did, it was like, yes, we're sure, darling, or things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not really sure what they were trying to get me to think in that spin. It was obviously that they were trying to get me, well, he didn't respond, and I'm like, again, if we flip the genders,
Yep.
the
How would that look?
problematic behavior is the one saying that they were a victim. And that's where I have an issue with this, is that if you remove all of the things and you take the facts that you are giving me and then you flip genders, we walk away feeling that one person has a problem with their story and one person does not. And in this particular case, the problematic story is the one that the victims are telling. I would like their full interview to be released so that I can make a better determination, because, to be frank, I can't determine what's real and what isn't when I am taking 5 minutes of interview time for half an hour. I'm guesstimating. It's like 5 minutes of interview clip per half an hour of commentary about the rest of the interview.
Oh, okay. So not even like, so based on that, but it's like, let me tell you what happened. That's creepy and wrong. Yeah. Yeah.
I have a really hard time with that. So I can't judge these women at all or their story. I can't say their story is accurate, and I can't say their story is inaccurate. I'm saying your stories aren't actually told in this podcast.
Yeah, you don't know their story yet.
Nope. And we don't have Gaiman's story. So they didn't tell us both sides of the story. This is 4 hours of clickbait.
Yeah.
And I don't know what the follow-up is. But I'm not selling any of my first edition Neil Gaiman books. Not yet.
No. Well, and it's also, I don't know, what comes to my mind is, having read as much of Gaiman's work as I have, just the way that his mind works is probably a bit, shall we say, unconventional, outside the box, perhaps. So I do that. That always makes me nervous, like wary, too, is sort of the same thing with Johnny Depp.
Yep.
They both strike me as very out of the box people in different ways. Not trying to compare the two side by side, but yeah, I think it's I think
They,
it's going to be interesting if it continues to evolve to see what we hear from both sides.
I'm open to hearing from both sides. If any of them would like to have an actual conversation, reach out.
Mm.
Because what that 4 hours I listened to is not a conversation. Now, here's what I'm going to say to all three of them. All three of them. If you reach out to me and we have a conversation, that's great. I am going to come at it and I'm going to ask you for facts and evidence. I'm not necessarily just going to take your word for it out of the gate. I'm going to believe, trust, and then verify. So if you come at me with something like one of the things in one of the stories was in Scarlett's story, I think it was, that she checked herself in for suicide watch at a hospital in New Zealand and then checked herself out the next day. And maybe that happened. Every place is different. When I Googled New Zealand's laws, the thing that I found, and I'm not saying I found the right thing, but the thing that I found was that it was a 5-day hold. So if you join us and you come in and have a conversation, I have questions about that. Like freebie, I'm going to ask you about that because I have questions as to why did they let you out after only 1 day when it's typically a 5-day hold?
Yeah.
How did that come about? And I'm going to swoop before we wrap up, but here's what I'm going to say because this came up a lot in the Depp Heard trial, and this came up way too often in this podcast. If you are a survivor, your story is enough. Across the board, if you are telling the truth, your story is enough. Do we need to work better at having police across the world that do better and take care of victims? Yeah. Yeah, we do. Survivors worldwide. And you'll note I am using the term survivor, not women or man. Because I have known men who have been victims of assaults. So don't come at me and tell me that women can't be perpetrators, and don't tell me that men are the only like it's a gender neutral thing. I don't care if you're cis, I don't care if you're trans, I don't care. If you are a survivor, your story is enough. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Because here's the thing, humans across, I know I'm soapboxing, I'm sorry. Humans, when we see an honest story, as a general rule, we believe it. We don't need the photos and we don't need the messages and we don't need all of the rest of it. So if your story isn't enough and everybody you talk to wants more information, is it really what happened across the board? I guess is my question. Or could it be a misunderstanding? Because I know I have situations where for me, it was one thing. And when I talk to the other person in the story, I find out it was something else for them. And neither one of us is right or wrong. It's a different thing. So anyway, your story is enough. This idea, because they kept saying, well, we didn't have enough evidence, therefore it's, or all the evidence only verified his story, so nobody believes us. give me your interview because your story is enough. And if your story rings true, you're like, and that's the thing. And here's how it's going to ring true. Tell the truth.
Yeah, I often wonder if there's self-editing to protect things that you're not proud of, which, I understand.
Yeah.
I think all of us have moments or more than that in our lives that we're not proud of, things that we wouldn't want to expose to the light of day. I've run into this in my personal life with people that I know and am very close to. I think at some point, as we continue to appropriately empower people to think about consent and to expect to give informed consent, there also is the question of what happens when you don't give consent, but you also don't say no.
Right.
I don't know that the answer is the same across the board on that. And I certainly don't know what the right answer is in a given situation. But I think it's appropriate that as a society, we start to talk about the fact that that can still be traumatic, that can still be something that you need to deal with that other person, whether it's in a legal setting or just in a moving past the trauma setting. I think that I'm not trying to invalidate that experience by any stretch of the imagination, but because we're just getting to the point of, not even appropriately, but more coming to essay stories with more empathy. I think it's something that we also still need to explore. So, and I think that I have witnessed people feeling ashamed of the fact that in the moment they did freeze, in the moment they couldn't voice what they actually wanted to say. And so, that was the tie in there in case that felt like a sharp turn. It's all of a piece to me. Again, if the story is the truth, but you're trying to keep the bad parts, the parts that you aren't proud of, to yourself, it can still, unfortunately, not quite ring true, I think is part of the problem. And that's scary, and that's something that everybody has to deal with in the way that feels right to them. Well, and I'm sorry to anybody that is having the same emotional reaction that I'm just barely managing to keep inside to this whole conversation, because there's a lot of trauma out there. There is a lot of unexamined, still shrouded in darkness trauma out there. So just being a survivor is also really freaking impressive and something to be proud of.
It is something to be proud of, and being a survivor, the likelihood that every second person you see on the street is a survivor in some way, shape, or form is probably pretty solid numbers, I would think. And I keep thinking back to one of my relationships. You'll know the one, Mandy, but I'm not going to out this particular human being on the interwebs in this way. But here's what I will say. To me, there were some really terrible things done. There was no essay involved or anything like that, but there was isolation. There was saying one thing to me and another thing to our friends, cutting me out of our mutual friend group, and building this narrative about me that didn't exist. And then, so he was talking out of both sides of his face with the whole thing. And one of the mutual friends that we still share, upon hearing about the isolation, the cutting me out, the gaslighting, all of that, was like, that's abusive behavior, sir. And I keep coming back to that because here's the thing. To me, yeah, that was not a good thing. That was not a good relationship. That was not a healthy relationship. And yes, it was abusive, emotionally abusive behavior. He never would have physically hurt me. And I know everybody says it would escalate. This is no, not with this particular person. with another ex of mine, absolutely, but not with him. And I can sit here and tell you that I was no saint. And yeah, the gaslighting does some funny things to your brain, and you find yourself shouting things in a parking lot that you did not expect to come out of your face. But that's a me problem. That's not something that he did. And when I look back and think if I were in that situation now, I think I would probably handle it differently because I've had 2 years of therapy. But I also can't sit here and tell you if he was a public figure, I wouldn't talk to these reporters at all because he's also a good person. He might not have been a good person to me, but he is a good person. And I am fully aware that I am somebody's traumatic event. I don't know who, but somebody. I am the ultimate villain in their story. And so I guess as we prepare to close this out, I'm going to follow this, but here's what I'm going to ask everybody who comes and joins us on this channel. We're not going to vilify, and we're not going to take everything at face value. These are allegations. We assume the allegations are accurate. Now we go through and we get more information. I think that's a pretty fair way of going about it. So, Neil, Scarlett, Kay, I have questions. And that's I want the full hell, I just want to listen to the entire interview. I don't want the commentary on the interview. I want to listen to the interview. If we can play some of the interview on here and discuss it, that would be worthy of conversation. I don't know. Am I asking for the world, Mandy? I might be. I might be asking for the world.
Possibly from those three people, but not the actual world. No, yeah, right.
So, I think it's fair to ask for more information. And you know what? If we have a double down, let's get the old perpetrators back together. Looking at you, Louis C.K. And Charlie Rose, and let's have a boohoo life fest. If we get to that point, I'll chuck them in the bin with the rest of them.
Yeah.
We haven't reached that point yet, and we're a long way from it. So, this is my, what is it? Every 2-3 months, something like this comes up, and I remind everybody that being a public figure doesn't mean you're not human.
Well, you were talking earlier about all the reaction about, is anybody good anymore? Which I've heard too. And it's like, has anyone ever been perfect? Ever in the history of humanity? I mean, maybe like 3 people come to mind, but I also don't know that we ever done any investigative reporting on them. And that's it, and from my experience, maybe between everybody and all the different experiences in the world, we could come up with like 20, max. But that's it. Nobody's perfect. Very, 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 very few people anyway. So I think that, yes, that is also something to consider. And in addition to being interested in learning more, I'll be interested to see how both sides continue to talk about it.
Yeah. Yep. And I also am going to caution folks, we count in this. It's not a bad thing to know where the reporter is coming from, because I'm not a journalist.
No.
I don't have, I'm a lady with a mic and a camera and an awful lot of opinions and pretty solid soapbox over here. But I'm not a reporter. But you know what I like to know? Where my reporters stand on certain issues, because it's going to tell me if they're going to bring a certain flavor to their piece.
That's right.
And in this particular case, we're looking at somebody that doesn't think the trans community should exist. And that immediately sets me off for problems. So, nuance. It's not a thing you can do in a tweet. So,
Very true.
with that, I suppose I should swoop. And we probably need to get rolling. The poor dog is still having serious panic attacks. So, you know, I'm gonna swoop. And then we can wrap it up. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you all for subscribing, and let us
Do like and subscribe and do all of the things. Please
yes,
and thank you.
please. Am I ever gonna remember that to put that the first 5 minutes of a video? Probably not.
Nah.
Nope.
And a happy belated 4th of July to
Happy
those who
belated
felt
4th.
comfortable celebrating it in our current climate. I hope some of you partied like it was 1999, because it feels a little bit like it. Yeah.
Yes. If you, well, as usual, if you've got a story, we're going to Baldwin next. That's, well, Baldwin and Gaiman are going to be our two. Baldwin, Gaiman.
And probably some more on the SCOTUS stuff. And
oh, yeah.
More to come on some of those politically inclined things as well.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's time we dive into some of those things. So, tracking the Gaiman situation at this point, I'm gonna have to really think about things given the amount of first editions that I have collected over the years. But you know what? We'll see how that goes. For now, I'm gonna delete that app that I had to get and sign up for to do this.
Was that Tortoise? Was that what you had to?
Yep. Couldn't listen to it. I checked on Spotify. I think I checked on one other place, and I Googled it, and I could not find it for free to listen to unless I downloaded their app and created an account on their app.
Awesome.
I don't like that. I don't like that level of clickbait. That is level clickbait epic. Right.
Yes.
I strive to never reach that level of clickbait requirement. To put out a blurb on a thing and then force everybody into this little pigeonhole. Like,
yeah, remind me someday to tell you about the Epoch Times.
Yeah. Yeah. So with that, I hope you had a wonderful 4th, and may your pets recover faster than mine seems to be doing from fireworks and like. Yeah.
Stay out of the crazy heat and humidity.
That, because my brain clearly just melted. So I'll run
out. Or enter it as safely as you can.
Yes. Hydrate. My apologies, ladies and gentlemen. I'm rolling the outro. My brain just stopped functioning.
Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Unfiltered Tea. Don't forget to hit that like button. If you have a story you want our unfiltered take on, go ahead and drop it in the comments, and we will see you next time.